morning, students. In the last video, we learned about the lateral aspect of the skull as seen from the lateral aspect, where we have learned a fossa here, and that was quite a shallow fossa. This is called as temporal fossa, bounded below by the zygomatic arch. Now today we are going to learn a fossa which lies below the zygomatic arch and deep. This is called as the infratemporal fossa. Now this infratemporal fossa is a irregular fossa, okay, and this is below the zygomatic arch. If I keep it in the anatomical position, this is the zygomatic arch and this fossa lies, okay, deep and below the zygomatic arch, okay, and it lies just behind the posterior surface of the maxilla. This is maxilla from the anterior surface. Then we see here the maxilla. This is the posterior surface of the maxilla, and it lies behind the posterior surface of the maxilla. Now this fossa, the infratemporal fossa here, it communicates above with the temporal fossa. As I am passing my finger deep to this zygomatic arch from infratemporal fossa towards the temporal fossa, because this is the temporal, shallow-temporal fossa, okay. Now, if we come to see the, boundaries of this infratemporal fossa, let us come to see the anterior wall of the infratemporal fossa. Some of the wall of this temporal fossa are present and some will be deficient, okay. But if you see the anterior wall of the temporal fossa, this is formed by the posterior surface of maxilla, okay. I am just showing you in oblique view. This is the posterior surface of the maxilla bone, okay, as you have seen it from the front aspect. This was the maxilla, and this is the anterior wall of the infratemporal fossa, okay, formed by the posterior surface of the maxilla. And if you will see carefully this posterior surface of the maxilla, there will be many small foraminas present here, and this small foramina, they are for the passage of the blood vessels, that is and the nerve also, and this is for the branches of the superior alveolar nerve and vessel. Note down these foraminas on the posterior surface of maxilla, which is forming the anterior wall of the infratemporal fossa, is for the branches of superior alveolar nerve and vessels. Okay. After seeing this anterior wall, let us go to the medial wall, and this will be the medial wall where I am putting my finger. This medial wall is formed by the lateral pterygoid plate, and then there will be a small bone here between the posterior surface of maxilla and the lower end of the lateral pterygoid plate, okay. This part, this is the excuse me, it is called as the pyramidal process of palatine bone. This area, this one, it is called as, which fills the gap between the lateral pterygoid plate and the posterior surface of the maxilla. So these two structures, they will form the medial wall of the pterygoid plate, okay, medial wall of the pterygoid plate. Now, between this anterior wall and the medial wall, you can see in the upper part there is a fissure, and this fissure is called as pterygomaxillary fissure. Why it is called pterygomaxillary fissure? This is because on the anterior aspect, this is the maxilla, and posteriorly it is the pterygoid plate. Hence this fissure is called as the pterygomaxillary fissure. And deep to this pterygomaxillary fissure, there is presence of a very shallow fossa here, and this fossa will be called as pterygopalatine fossa. It will be called as pterygopalatine fossa. So pterygomaxillary fissure and pterygopalatine fossa are there. Now let us go to the lateral wall, and if you will see the lateral wall, then if I articulate here the mandible here, then this will form the lateral wall, that means deep to the ramus and the coracoid process, coronoid process, deep to the ramus and the coronoid process of the mandible. See here, this is the mandible and this is the ramus of the mandible, and this is coronoid process of mandible. If I am passing my finger from deep to the zygomatic arch here, you can see that this fossa is bounded in living condition by the ramus of the mandible and coronoid process of this ramus, right? So this is the lateral wall of the infratemporal fossa. If I remove this mandible, then the lateral wall is gone. Okay, lateral wall is gone. Roof of this fossa is formed by the greater wing of the sphenoid. Okay, so this is the greater wing of the sphenoid. I am showing you the roof, and this roof is the greater wing of the sphenoid, this whole area. Okay, it is the greater wing of the sphenoid bone, and you can see in the greater wing of the this sphenoid bone, it is there is a foramina which can be seen in the greater wing of the sphenoid. This is foramina ovale and this is the foramina spinosum. Okay, and these two foramina, they are in the greater wing of the sphenoid. Thus these are the foramina which are present in the roof. Okay, they are present in the roof, right? Anteriorly, if you trace this roof, okay, then this is showing in its lateral part a fissure. See this fissure? Okay, I hope you can see this fissure. Yes, this fissure. Okay, this fissure here. This fissure is called as the infraorbital fissure. Okay, it is called as infraorbital fissure, and this fissure communicates the infratemporal fossa will communicate with the orbit. Okay, this is that infraorbital fissure through which I am passing the wire. Okay, and this comes here into the I mean to say the infratemporal fossa, so that this roof anteriorly will be in junction with that of the infraorbital fissure. Okay, and that is at the junction of the roof and the medial wall. Okay, roof and this is medial wall and this is the roof. Okay, in the medial wall, right? The floor. Okay, the floor is deficient. The floor, there is nothing like in the floor. Okay, so it is not bounded by any structure, so it is open. Okay, no posterior, I mean say no boundary for the floor. Similarly, there is no boundary posterior wall of this fossa. Infratemporal fossa neither has floor nor it has the posterior wall. Okay, and both this floor and that of the posterior wall, they are open. Okay, I hope that you have understood its anterior wall of the infratemporal, its medial wall of the its roof you have understand, and you have understood with the I mean to say the lateral wall which is formed by the ramus of mandible. Okay, so this is that fossa, deep fossa here, okay, which is called as the infratemporal fossa. I will try to show you this fossa, okay, with the help of a diagram also. Okay, again I will take the use of this book, Human Osteology. Okay, and this is written by me and published by PP, and I am thankful for using this diagram to the PP publisher. Now this diagram I was talking of you. If you can see this diagram, okay, then this is we are seeing it from the floor, okay, floor side, okay, from the inferior aspect we are seeing this infratemporal. So this is that infratemporal fossa. This is the posterior surface of the maxilla. This is the infraorbital fissure, and this is that greater wing of the sphenoid. See this part? This is the greater wing of the sphenoid. Okay, this is from the on the in the floor of the temporal fossa, and this is forming the roof. This is because infratemporal crest is here. So this part of this greater wing of the sphenoid forms the roof, and then you can see posteriorly there is a foramina ovale, and this is foramina spinosum. Thus the roof communicates here with the middle cranial fossa through these two foraminas, okay, through these two foramina. Now we have seen that there will be the lateral pterygoid plate, which is not seen because it is present here, and only the roof is seen here. Okay, the roof and the anterior wall is seen. This is the zygomatic. That means the infratemporal fossa communicates above deep to this zygomatic arch with that of the temporal fossa. I will tell you the other communications of these. Okay. What are the other communications? The communication which we have learned is with that of the infraorbital fissure, with that of the orbit, with the pterygomaxillary fissure, with the pterygopalatine fossa, and then with the foramina, with the middle cranial fossa, foramina ovale and spinosum. It communicates with the middle cranial fossa. And here deep to the zygomatic arch, it communicates with the temporal fossa. So both the fossa, they are continuous with each other, right? Let us see the contents of the infratemporal fossa lastly. Contents which are within the infratemporal fossa are the lateral and medial pterygoid muscle, medial and lateral pterygoid muscle, and the lower part of the temporalis muscle, which is coming from the temporal fossa. This is temporal, and temporalis muscle will come to attach here on the coracoid process, okay, on this process, coronoid, not coracoid, on the coronoid process of the mandible. Okay, this is the coronoid. In this, the temporalis, lower part of temporalis, the medial and lateral pterygoid, because the medial pterygoid will go to the pterygoid plate, and the lateral pterygoid will come and get attached on to the fovea, okay, in the just at the neck of the mandible, neck of the mandible. So lateral and medial pterygoid plate are the contents. Similarly, through here, through the infratemporal fossa passes the maxillary artery, and there is presence of pterygoid venous plexus. So the maxillary artery is present into the infratemporal fossa, and pterygoid venous plexus is there. Then there are various nerves, the mandibular nerve, the maxillary nerve, the chorda tympani nerve, and the otic ganglion is also present in the infratemporal. So these are the nerves and vessels which are present, and the muscles which are present in the infratemporal fossa. This completes a short video on the infratemporal fossa. Thank you very much for watching this video.